Welcome into the Autzen Audibles Podcast. One of us is live from PPG Paint Arena here in Pittsburgh. Erik is back home in Eugene, getting ready to help cover this Oregon tournament run with me. Erik, I'm in a new city for myself, but I will be honest with you. I wish I went to Spokane. A, because that would have been allowed you to come, but B, it's a lot colder here than I was anticipating. It's actually quite chilly. It was snowing yesterday.
Well, it's not snowing in Eugene. It was about 70 degrees on Tuesday. But if it makes you feel any better, Matt, it will probably be raining whenever you return back to Eugene. If you return back to Eugene, because I guess that would be dependent on what happens this weekend in Pittsburgh.
Yes, yeah. What happens here in Pittsburgh will be interesting, and I've never covered a basketball game this far east before. Louisville was as far as I've ever gone. Dana Altman's never coached in the state of Pennsylvania before. He said he's been to Pittsburgh, but he's never coached this far east for Oregon. I guess he coached in Florida, so that matters there. But it's tournament time, and then it's actually pretty cool to be back in the venue. You may be able to hear it through the background noise. Teams are warming up on the floor right now. It's NC State's turn on the arena. They get an hour or about 45 minutes of court time. Everyone is using the bass in the arena to their full extent, bumping music. So I apologize for the loud noise in the background, but it only gets louder if I go anywhere else. I'm in a suite for the Steelers, or not Steelers, Penguins. A pretty nice one, too. Oregon plays tomorrow at 4 o'clock local time, 1 p.m. Pacific time, and it's pretty cool to be back in a tournament environment. It's been a couple years. For me, it's been since 2019 when Oregon went to the Sweet 16 and lost to Virginia in Louisville. So it's good to be back. It's exciting to be back, but it'll get really exciting tomorrow when games start playing early in the morning.
And I think one thing that I thought we talk about in general was just the fact that it sounds like Oregon fans are going to have a little bit of help tomorrow with Creighton being in the same bracket. It hadn't really dawned on me until I saw Greg McDermott, the Creighton head coach's comments this morning about how the Creighton contingent will be rooting for Oregon very heavily on Thursday just to support Dana Altman. And Omaha is quite a bit closer to Pittsburgh than Eugene. Creighton is a number 3 seed. They are a legitimate, Final Four caliber team, but they think they have that expectation. Yep. So they are going to travel. And as Greg McDermott said, there will be a sea of blue supporting Oregon on Thursday. So I just think that could add sort of an interesting dynamic to the atmosphere there, Matt, because I had thought maybe like, South Carolina is going to have a huge numbers advantage. They're much closer to Pittsburgh. That program has had a really big year, a breakout season after not being very good for a bit.
Yeah.
This is going to be.
Did you realize? Yeah. I made the same mistake that you did. Not really putting 2 and 2 together that Creighton would be rooting here. Now McDermott did actually say they'll be rooting for Oregon for one game. And
yes. Let's make that point very clear.
But he was actually, I was in the room when he was talking about it, and James Crepio, the Oregonian, asked the question, and I thought like the answer came out really genuine, and he was very complimentary of Dana Altman, saying like the program would not be in the place that it was or that it is if it wasn't for what Dana Altman did in his 16 years at Oregon. And he talks about the challenges of getting Creighton to a place where they needed a new arena, to then having the ability to fill a 17,000 seat arena, which was for a Missouri Valley Conference team at the time. And then he was just very complimentary. You wrote a story up on it on duckterritory.com, so I highly encourage you guys to go and read that story. Some good stuff there. And I will say this, I don't know how many Creighton fans are going to be here. I haven't seen any of them. I'm sure there'll be more than Oregon fans. I don't expect a large group of Oregon fans. Maybe Altman's family is here. A couple of the assistants brought some family members here. The Oregon band is here. The cheerleaders are here. There's some administrators that are here. But from a pure walk-up, not associated to the University of Oregon's employees or coaches, it's probably going to be a very small contingent. So they're going to be looking for anyone and everyone that wants to root for Oregon tomorrow night against South Carolina. And I'll be honest, like, I'm curious, Eric, too, just what this environment will be like for South Carolina, because it's not a school that historically is known for basketball success. Like you said, they are having a huge year this year. They were, I think, at one point a top 10 team in the season. They were 21-3 at one point in the year. They're only one of 5 teams this season in college basketball to have a road top 5 win. They are only one of 18 teams to have multiple top 10 wins this season. But the last time they've been in the tournament, I didn't put this together until I was reading their notes earlier today. Same year the Ducks made the Final Four, 2017, is the last time they've been in the tournament. So I don't know what to expect. We very well could see a huge number of South Carolina fans fly up for this game. We could also see a fan base that maybe wasn't expecting this and doesn't make the trip because they weren't planning for it. Something to look forward to. I don't know, just something to factor in.
The other part is where is the South Carolina basketball fan base split? Because the women are undefeated, yes, the heavy favorites to win the national championship.
I hadn't thought of that either.
And so they're also playing, I believe, on Friday. So I'm wondering if there's going to be, I could be wrong on the date there, but they're playing this weekend as well at another location. I'm just wondering how much that of an impact that'll have. Like, from an Oregon perspective, this is not a split fan base. All of the Oregon basketball supporters, if they are going to travel, will be going and watching the one team that's playing, whereas South Carolina's got maybe a little bit of a split there.
And what does the neutral fan do? Because the natural assumption is, they just root for the upset, the underdog, 11 seed. But Oregon is not – they're not the mid-major that typically gets this kind of seed. So, I don't know. Like, that's just something to watch for. But plenty of excitement in the air. It is fun to be in tournament setting. This arena, it's on a hockey rink. It is a bit colder than normal. But the venue looks sweet. Like, let's just walk and talk here for a second. Let me show you.
Oh, wow. For the video audience.
Look at this. I mean,
wow.
The arena is pretty cool for a hockey arena, and it's playing basketball in a hockey arena, but it's going to be fun. I got a feeling this place could get pretty darn loud if it gets full.
And if you're an audio listener, you just go check out about the 7:40 mark of the video to watch Matt give you a sneak preview of what the court will look like for tomorrow's game.
Yeah. All right. You watched a little bit of these games for South Carolina yesterday, getting ready, familiarizing yourself a little bit with South Carolina. I'm curious if your assessment kind of aligns with what Dana Altman said today, calling them an extremely physical team from a basketball perspective.
So, yeah, I watched 3 games, or the majority of 3 games that I could find. I watched their 2 upsets over Kentucky and Tennessee back in January. They had, as Matt said, these 2 huge wins on the road at Kentucky, at Tennessee within like a week in late January. That really put them on the map. They had a good non-conference schedule, but I think those wins kind of solidified them. And then I also watched their most recent game, which was a 50-point loss to Auburn in the quarterfinals of the SEC tournament. So those are 3 games I wanted to watch them playing at their best, and then what happened most recently. Here's kind of my list of notes. Very inconsistent from 3, but in those 2 wins, they hit a lot of them. And it came from a variety of guys. And this is like one of those teams where depth-wise, they have more players that are going to play than Oregon. This is going to be like a 10, 11-player rotation as opposed to 8. And there's a variety of guys that can get hot. Like a freshman named Jacoby Wright hit 4 against Kentucky. He is not an elite 3-point shooter otherwise, but in that game, he went off. And the way they play offensively, it's almost more outside in than inside out.
Yeah.
They have kind of a 4-man out sort of style where their center is like 6'8", BJ Mack, and he basically hovers around the 3-point line. He shoots a lot of threes. He's inconsistent. He's shooting like 31% this year, but he shoots like 3 or 4 a game. And there are games where he hits a bunch of them and it changes things. And there's games where he doesn't. And to your point on physicality, I think defensively they are a very, very difficult matchup for a lot of teams. I think Dana compared them to UCLA. I kind of like that from the perimeter perspective. They don't have a rim protector like an Mbona, but they've got long, athletic guys, and they will get up in your face, play a lot of man. They try to stop the dribble drive, but if you do beat the guy to the rim, it seems like you can shoot over them. They don't, like I said, Mac is 6'8", kind of undersized. I really like their power forward, who's a true freshman.
Yep.
His name, Colin Murray Boyles. Sorry, something popped up on my computer here. And he's 6'7", kind of does it all. I wrote as athletic as hell. I mean, he's just really bouncy. He can impact the game in a lot of different ways. He's kind of limited offensively, but he scored 31 against Vanderbilt on 14 of 17 shooting with all that stuff coming around the rim. He's not a perimeter shooter. He's the only guy they play who doesn't shoot the three. He's only taken 5 all seasons, but he's big, broad, good rim protector, switches really well on smaller players and plays with a lot of effort. You've got to box him out and find him because he's really relentless on the glass. Mac is kind of a weird player for me watching him because he's like either he is hitting from 3 and really effective that way, but if he's not, he's pretty much I don't think he provides as much value if he's not making shots from the perimeter. He's not a good rebounder. He's big and strong, so he will hold up against a player like Dante, maybe around the basket in terms of positioning, but he's not going to interrupt any shots. He's 6'8". Right. He's 6'8" without much length, so kind of an interesting player. And then a couple other things I wrote down here. I don't think they're an elite dribble drive finish team, but they create a lot of kick out threes off of dribble drives. And Michi Johnson is a really good player in that regard. He beats his man regularly off the dribble and finds players from 3. He's probably their best overall scorer. I think he's leading the team in scoring, but not a great 3-point shooter, 31.1%, shoots about 6 per game. So high volume. He's definitely a player to know. And then there's a couple of wings here that have had injury issues recently. Talon Cooper got hurt in the SEC quarterfinal, lost to Auburn. Miles Studi has missed some time of late. Those are their 2 best 3-point shooters. Cooper's 45%, Studi 39. Both have had injuries. According to South Carolina coach Lamont Paris, Cooper's full strength, ready to go. Studi sounds like he's maybe in a limited capacity. And then the last thing I wrote down here was they only have one player over of 6'8" that they play, and that's backup center Josh Gray, and he's 7 feet. And I'll just be honest, aside from being big, he is a terrible basketball player. I mean, this is kind of like a Cavell Bigby Williams type, I think, where he's big and long, but he is not very athletic. He is a non-threat offensively, aside from rim running and putbacks. And defensively, he actually kind of gets moved around a little bit more than you'd think for someone who's 7 foot, 250. So, one last thing I was going to say as well, not from just a personnel, but just from what I learned from watching the games they won, they shot the hell out of the ball from 3. The games to Auburn they lost, which they lost by a combined 71 points. They got boat raced both times. 6 of 27 from 3, and they got their ass kicked on the glass and around the rim. And so if you're Oregon, if you can stop them from shooting threes and you can manhandle them around the basket a little bit, I think that's the path to win, because this is not a team that will necessarily overpower you at the point of attack on drives, and they don't rebound very well. I mentioned Boyles Murray, and he's a player certainly does, or Murray Boyles, I should say. He's a player that does rebound okay, but like Mac doesn't rebound very well. And again, I'm not very high on the Josh Gray kid. I think he's kind of a project player, but he's a senior, so I don't know what they're developing there. But those are my insights.
I think if South Carolina comes out and is shooting the ball effectively from 3, it could be a long night for Oregon. Because then, especially BJ Mack, because then that draws out Dante, and you have to guard him, you have to get a hand up. Maybe that forces Oregon out of their 2-3 zone. But if Oregon can disrupt South Carolina offensively, if they have a poor shooting night, whether that's Oregon's doing or whether that's just an off night for South Carolina, both could happen. I think the way they play and the size that they have and the roster that they have plays into Oregon's strengths defensively. And granted, Oregon's defense is not good this season. It hasn't been good. But this is one of those teams that, their style kind of will play into or will help Oregon play defensively just because their strengths play into what Oregon can kind of be strong at. And I agree with you with BJ Mack. He's not a very good rebounder. And then even if he was a good rebounder, having him out on the 3-point line. Look, Oregon's going to want to play a 2-3 zone. This is what they want to do. That it's clicked for them. They found their rhythm defensively here. They want to do that token pressure in the 3-quarter, half-court trap type stuff. And then they'll fall back and they'll play kind of like a pack line 2-3 zone. And if they're going to try and hoist threes, especially with BJ Mack, and he's not hitting them, you're taking away your biggest body on the floor to try and disrupt Dante to get the rebound. You're taking away one of your better rebounders on the team and leaving it up to basically one guy to contend with Dante. And I don't care if it's a Creighton potentially next game, or if it's a 2 seed in Tennessee. I'll take Dante matched up against basically any freshman out there in the country right now, from a physical standpoint. Look, there's going to be freshmen that are NBA draft picks, no doubt about it. There aren't very many of them that will match physically what Dante can bring to the table. And if that's who it's battling out for the rebounds primarily, that's a good thing for Oregon. But the caveat is the shots, and Oregon has to contend. South Carolina is just like Oregon, where if we've said it all year with Oregon, like if they can get some timely shooting, they're going to be pretty good and they'll have a chance to win. It's the same thing for South Carolina. I'm really curious to see how Oregon defends Cooper. I think he's their best player. I know Michi Johnson's up there. He leads the team in scoring, but I think Cooper is just kind of he may not be their best player, but maybe he's their most important player because he scores, he defends, he distributes the rock, and he can rebound. And how Oregon dictates and guards him is going to be a key here. And you're right, they have more players than Oregon does. They'll have fresher legs than what Oregon will have. I'm real curious to see just kind of how the rotations work again for Oregon. We saw a lot of Cario Aquindo the last couple of games. Does that continue on into the tournament? Does Oregon find ways to get Muhammad Diawara on the floor to just give Dante these short, quick breaks right before media timeouts? Kwame Evans matching up with their own freshman and Colin Murray Boyles is going to be interesting to watch because I personally think when Oregon plays good, it's because Evans is on the floor for 20 or more minutes a game and isn't worried about foul trouble. And in the games that he picks up 2 early fouls and has to sit for basically most of the first half and then has to be so careful in that second half's first 7 or so minutes to avoid foul trouble again, I think it forces Oregon to play so tentative and so careful that they really can't be aggressive. And he's going to be, that's going to be a matchup for Kwame to watch. It's certainly going to be a battle, I think. But look, I don't know about you. Like, did you walk away watching more film feeling more confident in Oregon? Because I think as this game has gotten closer, I've started to look a little bit more and more on South Carolina, talking to some people that know South Carolina. I think this is a good matchup, and I think it's not going to surprise me right before the game starts. Maybe the money line switches in favor of Oregon.
The concern for me is just if South Carolina gets hot, and you brought up I think a good point with BJ Mack, especially if their big guy, their starting center, if he's shooting it at a high clip from range, that will force Oregon to maybe have to recalibrate defensively. I wonder, could Kwame theoretically swap onto him and just to have somebody with a little bit more closing speed, somebody who can maybe move around a little better, because they do move him around. I mean, they use him like he's like a 6'5" guard almost in terms of how they're getting shots from on the perimeter. So that would be the one thing I would be worried about. But they're not quite as overpowering. You know, they've got, like, I love this Colin Murray Boyles kid. I think he's awesome. I'm actually really excited to watch him. He's just like a do-it-all player. And, you know, even though there's some offensive limitations, he does so much. I'm trying to think, like, it's kind of like an early Jordan Bell, but maybe not quite as bouncy, just in terms of he kind of does all the hustle stuff. He kind of moves around, rebounds. So they've got a little bit of that. But, you know, I don't think athletically they have – I don't think Oregon is at a big disadvantage athletically, which was something I was maybe anticipating feeling after going into it. And I do think the fact that Oregon has 3 big, sturdy perimeter players in Bam Tracy, Kerry Oquendo, and Jermaine Couisnard is pretty impactful because of the way South Carolina tries to defend. And my big thing going into this is if Jermaine Couisnard in particular can win off the dribble, I think he could score a lot of points because I don't see anyone at the rim there who's really gonna contend or contest his shots regularly. So I do think it's actually pretty favorable. It's just going to come down to a lot of it. I mean, this is how basketball works. If South Carolina shoots the rock well, it's going to be tough. But if South Carolina goes out and can't make threes like they did in those 2 losses to Auburn, there's no reason Oregon can't win and maybe win pulling away late, just because I don't see the consistency offensively outside of 3-point shot making. And again, they don't even necessarily try to go at the rim on a lot of those drives. It's really a drive and kick kind of an offense. So I do think that there are some offensively, they have enough deficiencies where I feel good enough about Oregon. And then defensively, I don't know if they match up quite as well as I thought they were going in.
Oregon has the best player on the floor.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And Follow Dante. And when it's a guy that you don't really have a player to match up with, that's conducive of victories. That leads you to victories when you have the best player and they don't really have someone that physically matches up with what he can do. Now, BJ Mack he's very similar to, this might be a name blast from the past, Evan Batty of Colorado a couple of years ago. Very similar body type, 6'8". They both are 6'8". They're both like 265. Batty obviously didn't shoot a ton of threes during his time at Colorado. If I remember right, he maybe made a couple over his career. So BJ Mack certainly shoots. And when I mean a couple, I pulled the stats up. He actually made 42 his senior season for Colorado.
Wow.
So that actually might be even a better comparison than I thought. But they've seen this type of body type before. Dante does not do well historically, though, out on the perimeter. So that's going to be the key, is can you keep him down in the paint, altering shots, grabbing rebounds. But then offensively, I don't know if they have an answer. And it's going to be, it's the same recipe as it was against Colorado, as it was in the second half against Arizona, and all game against UCLA. Dump the ball down to Dante, let him establish post position, and then from there, trust that he makes the right reads of what to do, whether that's spinning off the double team, splitting the double team, up and under moves, or passing it out quick. Or what we started to see a little bit in Vegas was guys finally starting to figure out the cutting angles and finding the lanes for him to feed passes to, because he's actually a pretty good passer. A lot of his turnovers typically come from him over dribbling and maybe trying to do something that he is not. And I think everything is just going to, as it's going to be the rest of the way this season, it's going to fall on Dante's shoulders. And if he plays well, I think things kind of set up well for Oregon to get an upset. By the way, we've talked about this before. Oregon is 7-0 in previous NCAA tournament opening round games for them. I guess I should say like their first game, because there was that VCU forfeit, but in their first game that they actually played against Iowa, right, they won. But they're 7-0. And this morning I was talking with James Crepey about it. I was like, I'm pretty sure they were all blowouts too. And so I went back and I looked them all. I think you know this answer, but do you know the scoring margin, the average scoring margin for Oregon in the first round, or the first game of the NCAA tournament played?
I saw and retweeted your tweet, Matt. So I unfortunately, it's about 20 points per game. Yep.
That is shock. Now some of that's inflated because They were a 1 seed in 2016. They were a 3 seed in 2017. They played Holy Cross and beat them by like 40 something in 2016, and then in 2017 they played Iona Gales and beat them pretty handily too. But all the other ones are kind of right around 15, 20 points, except for a 6-point win against Oklahoma State in 2014. And I don't think that game was as close as the score indicated. It was like, I think Oklahoma State may have scored twice in the last minute to get it under single digit or under the double digits. These games typically, historically, haven't been competitive for Oregon's opponent. And I guess even double down even more, Dana Altman's only lost one time between Pac-12 tournament play, CBI tournament play, NIT tournament play, and NCAA tournament play in the opening round game. All those combined, win or go home scenarios, he's only lost once. It's a pretty remarkable run. It's something that is going to be put at stake tomorrow. And I'm excited to see it. As the game gets closer, I'm getting more and more confident. And maybe that's a little bit of a homerism, probably is. But I just kind of think this is a matchup that Oregon can win, and we'll see what happens.
Well, here's what I'll say about South Carolina. Maybe the case for them winning would be just this is a team that has succeeded on big stages this year against good teams, right? We mentioned those 2 wins over Kentucky and over Tennessee. They also have wins over Mississippi State and a couple of other kind of premier teams in that conference. They had a great conference run. And so they've proven, and as you said, like Oregon will have the best player on the court. Like Dalton Knecht was obviously the best player for Tennessee in that game, right? Like that's a National Player of the Year candidate, and they found a way to win. Against Kentucky, Kentucky's got a bunch of, was it Reed Shepherd, their guard? I think he's going to be a lottery pick. They haven't always had the best players, and they found a way to win. So I will say, even though I do think N'Faly is undoubtedly the most talented player in this game, I think the Murray Boyles kid has real NBA upside as a potential first-round pick in future years. But he's certainly not the player N'Faly is. So they've proven that they can win these sorts of games. So I will bring that up. I also bring up what we talked about last time, which is these teams are kind of finishing the seasons in different manners. Like Oregon won its conference championship. And as we said earlier, the last time South Carolina took the floor, they lost by 40 points, albeit to an Auburn team that I have going very far in all of my brackets. Like Auburn is one of my buy teams in those. I did about 3 brackets. I think I have them in like the Final Four or the Elite 8 of most of them. I think that's a really good team. But I don't know if you're South Carolina, if you feel like you're playing your best basketball. Oregon undoubtedly does. And so I think that's one of those things. If you think this is a matchup where these teams are comparable, you just kind of look at which team has been playing better. And I think unquestionably Oregon is the answer there. And again, like the other thing that I was concerned about was just the location and the atmosphere. Like if this feels like a South Carolina home game, well, if Creighton is going to kind of contribute to making this feel neutral, or maybe South Carolina doesn't travel as well as I expect, and Oregon actually has the crowd at their backs, I don't see why this won't go their way. And that was, by the way, Matt, that was an element. And like, I remember that game in San Jose against Oklahoma State, that Marcus Smart upset we were talking about. Like Oregon had the fans behind them. Like in a lot of these games where they've been the lower seed and won an opening round, they have kind of had the crowd. If it gets that way, that would also be another recipe for Oregon pulling off this win. Again, I don't even know if it's really an upset anymore, other than the fact that it's a 6-11 and the line continues to be basically a pick 'em.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if you can hear it or not. Excuse me, now it's Texas Tech. Maybe it just changed. I don't know. I don't know who's playing music right now, but I absolutely love it. It's like mid-2000s, early 2000s vibe, like as if I was back in college. So whoever is on the court right now, I believe it's Texas Tech. You've won me over. I hope you win tomorrow. Other news from Media Day. One of the great things about the NCAA tournament is that they mandate open locker rooms, whether it's football, here for basketball, baseball, softball. They mandate open locker rooms. We get access to guys that we, quite frankly, wish we would have talked to months ago. So I was able to go into the locker room and get some good stuff. I wrote a story on Nate Biddle. I'm really appreciative of Nate being willing to be honest and open and be willing to talk about his year, because it's 5 games played, out with a wrist injury, and then came back after he played 3 games, out with an injury, came back, played 2 more, and then has shut down his season due to illness. He said that the first game back against Arizona State, within 1 minute, I remember this, he ran off the court. Just boom, gone. Substitution, real quick. Said he had to go throw up. And then it was that way for the next month for his life, of consistently throwing up, being really, really sick, not being able to get out of bed. He said he's now healthy. He's on the mend. He's coming back. He's not going to play the rest of the season. So you can stop asking about middle update injuries. Dana has already said he's not playing, but there's zero chance. He said he's lost a bunch of weight. He's lost a lot of his strength. He's lost a lot of his endurance. It's become bigger than basketball now for him. It's just getting himself healthy as a human being, not a basketball player. And he did say he's back next season. He's anxious to get back on the court. He's anxious to get back in the weight room. He's finding ways to help this team from the bench. And he's just really proud. I also spoke with Bartholomew, who did not close the door on a return next season to Oregon, his 6th year of college basketball. He has a COVID year of eligibility left if he wants to use it. I get the sense he probably will be back. Probably wasn't going to be that way before he got hurt, but he doesn't want to leave. He made he was really proud of himself that he was able to walk without any aid on senior day. He said that was a really big moment for him, and he did not want his last time on the court to be focused on an injury. And so sounds like he could be back, probably is going to be back next season. Caro Aquindo addressed it as well, said that, quite hasn't figured out what he wants to do, but he also said, like, that's a decision I need to make after the season is over. I'm fully committed right now to, helping this team go as far as we possibly can. And, I'll have a story up there as well on Caro Aquindo's decision. He also has a COVID year of eligibility should he choose to use it. I think pretty cool openness from some of these guys when, frankly, like, they don't have to be. And I don't think if they weren't enjoying their time here at Oregon, they wouldn't have been open about that. So we'll see what happens from a roster standpoint. We got some stuff from Oregon assistant coach Mike Menega about handling the duties of recruiting the portal while the NCAA tournament's going on. We'll have a story up on that as well. There's a lot to go here, but from a future standpoint, Biddle's back. Bartholomew and Aquindo are open to the idea, but are still kind of going to wait and see the process as the season comes to a close. They don't want to make a decision right now.
A Biddle thing is huge, and it's great that he's feeling better, because that was really. Did he ever get into any details of the specifics, or
no? He didn't. He kept it private, and look, I understand that. All we know is he lost a bunch of weight. He looked very sick, and he said that mentally he was not in a good space from what was going on. So I didn't want to press my luck. I was already getting him to be really open and forthcoming about what's going on, and so I didn't get too much of the details. But it sounds like he's trending back upwards now, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, it's great for him. He's kind of had a similar and Folly Dante start to his career, where it's like, we know he's really talented, and we should know when Nate was healthy early on, and again, it was like 3 games, you really started to see the type of player that he can be. And so the fact that he is feeling better, that he's on the mend, that there's optimism that he'll be good for next year, and the fact that he's committed to coming back, because you never know in the transfer portal era. He would be a very attractive player in the transfer market, even though he's only played, a handful of games this year and was kind of up and down with health and availability the last couple of years. I think it's really a big addition that he's coming back, and especially when you look at the front court and where Oregon is losing Dante, they're losing Diawara. I would imagine maybe they'll look to try to add a portal big player. I'm not sure, Matt.
100%. That has to be. It has to be added. It has to, but I think they have Ibrahim Traore, an incoming freshman that can play center. Dana Altman himself actually said like very, very similar player from a skill set, athleticism standpoint to where Jordan Bell was as a freshman. Now, I don't think they're expecting him to have a almost freshman All-American type season for Oregon next year. That's unfair to expect because Oregon didn't expect that out of Jordan Bell. Like he was pressed into action and actually rose to the occasion that year. But I think you would like to find somebody if you're gonna add a portal guy. One of them needs to be someone that I think can play between center and power forward. That way, it gives you just a little bit of position versatility, gives you kind of a backup insurance if Biddle can't play, or because the reality is, like you said, he's had a very similar career to Dante of staying healthy. Some of it's his, and a lot of it's not his fault. Injuries and illness you can't fault the player for.
Right.
But having some kind of backup insurance policy in case something does happen to him at center would be ideal. But you also want to find someone that maybe can play with Biddle or can play with Kwame Evans or can play with Traore, just to give you kind of some more position versatility because that's been lacking. So I would look at guys, either it's like a dynamite player like a Cliff Omarui from Rutgers who entered the portal today. That would be a guy that really can't play power forward, but Biddle can, and Evans clearly can. Either finding some dynamite transfer portal guy like an Omarui who will be one of the most sought-after players in the country, or finding someone that can kind of balance between the two positions.
A lot of things to like, right? How much a week or so has changed in terms of the optimism around the program. I think making the NCAA tournament, and then, as you shared, Matt, a lot of things to like for next year's team as well.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot to like, a lot of excitement. We'll be covering it live here from Pittsburgh tomorrow, 1 p.m. Pacific time start, 4 p.m. local time back here on the East Coast. By the way, Eric, real quick, watching sports on the East Coast sucks. It's so
really
bad.
Why is that?
It's terrible. Well, I wanted to watch. Thank God I actually didn't. But I wanted to watch some of the Virginia-Colorado State game last night in the first 4-in tournament, and the game wasn't going to start till like 10:15, and I was like, oh, there's no way. I've already been up since 4 a.m. Pacific time. There's no way I'm going to stay up that late to watch a game and then have to get up early the next morning. I'm going to go to bed. So thank God I didn't watch it. But I don't know. It just sucks that I'm going to have to be up till like 2 a.m. to watch some of these games on the West Coast.
Well, and I should say you should count yourself fortunate that you're not you're not covering a game that starts at 7 or 8 Pacific time, because there are games that start at those times. Obviously, that would be quite a late start for you guys out there.
All right, that's going to do it for us here on the Autzen Audibles Podcast. Thank you for listening to the show. Hopefully, maybe we'll do another one. Brief preview of Oregon versus somebody, Creighton or Akron. Maybe. We'll see. We'll discuss it if it happens. Hopefully, it does happen. We have to make that decision. But until the next one, you've been listening to the Autzen Audibles Podcast.
Talk to you later, folks.